In the winter of 1944, the war in Europe was reaching its breaking point. Hitler's empire was collapsing, but the Nazi high command had one final, desperate plan. A counterattack so audacious, it might turn the tide of war. To make it work, they needed deception, they needed confusion, and they needed men willing to become ghosts behind enemy lines. This is the true story of Operation Greif, the Nazi mission where German soldiers disguised themselves as Americans to infiltrate Allied lines during the Battle of the Bulge. By December 1944, the Allies had pushed through France and Belgium and were closing in on Germany. Hitler knew his armies were outnumbered and running out of supplies, but he believed one last strike could fracture the Allied advance and force a peace deal. The chosen location was the dense, snow-covered Ardennes forest, the least expected place for an attack. The operation would be swift, shocking, and full of deception. To command this operation, Hitler summoned one of his most daring officers, Otto Skorzeny, a tall, scarred commando already famous for rescuing Mussolini from imprisonment the year before. Skorzeny had a reputation for pulling off the impossible, and now he was asked to create chaos behind enemy lines. His mission? Infiltrate Allied territory and cause maximum confusion before the main German assault began. Hitler's plan was straightforward, but risky. German tanks and infantry would strike through the Ardennes, aiming for the port of Antwerp to split the Allied armies. Meanwhile, Skorzeny's special task force, disguised as American troops, would spread terror and misinformation from within. They would misdirect reinforcements, sabotage bridges, cut communication lines, and make the Allies doubt their own eyes. The unit was given the code name Operation Greif, meaning Griffin. But assembling the team proved difficult. The German army had no abundance of fluent English speakers. Skorzeny searched through thousands of files to find anyone who had lived, studied, or worked in English-speaking countries. He gathered roughly 150 soldiers with some command of English, but only a handful could pass for native speakers. Training began near Friedenthal, and later at a camp near Munich. There, soldiers practiced their new identities as Americans. They learned how to salute the U.S. way, how to drive captured jeeps, how to smoke like a GI, even how to curse like one. They memorized baseball teams, movie stars, slang, and the names of American generals. Skorzeny knew that even one wrong phrase could mean exposure and death. The unit was equipped with stolen U.S. uniforms, weapons, and vehicles taken from the front lines. Painters in the German army even recreated American stars and insignias on the jeeps and tanks. To the untrained eye, they looked perfectly genuine. When the Battle of the Bulge began on December 16, 1944, the fog and snow created the perfect cover. Skorzeny's men slipped through the chaos, posing as American MPs and engineers. They changed road signs, rerouted convoys, and sent Allied vehicles straight into German ambushes. Some even switched direction markers on key crossroads, turning the word Liège toward German artillery. The effect was immediate and devastating. Rumors began to spread through the Allied ranks. Germans dressed as Americans were everywhere. Panic took hold. Soldiers started questioning each other at checkpoints, asking for details only a real American would know. The capital of Illinois, the name of a baseball team, or the actor who played in the latest Hollywood film. Anyone who hesitated too long could be arrested or even shot. The deception reached such levels that General Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied forces, was placed under temporary guard after reports surfaced that German assassins disguised as GIs were plotting to kill him. Security in Paris and Reims went into lockdown. Every American officer's papers were checked multiple times a day. Suspicion was everywhere. Meanwhile, Skorzeny's men continued their mission. One small team destroyed ammunition depots. Another cut telephone cables used by Allied divisions. They intercepted radio messages and spread false commands to entire units. For several critical days, Operation Greif caused real chaos. The Allies lost time, and in war, time costs lives. But deception is fragile. Several of Skorzeny's disguised soldiers were captured near Malmedy and St. Vith. When their English slipped or their behavior seemed off, a jeep stopped by U.S. troops revealed maps printed in German and fuel cans marked Kraftstoff instead of gasoline. The illusion shattered. Under interrogation, the captured Germans revealed the existence of Operation Greif and Skorzeny's command. The Allies responded with fury. Wearing enemy uniforms during combat was considered espionage under international law, a crime punishable by death. Many of Skorzeny's captured men were executed by firing squad. Back behind German lines, Skorzeny realized his operation was collapsing. The Allied command now knew what to look for, and any soldier found in American uniform risked immediate execution. Still, he continued smaller deception missions, using radio broadcasts and rumors to confuse the enemy as long as possible. As the Battle of the Bulge dragged on, the German offensive began to fail. Fuel shortages, Allied air superiority, and relentless resistance turned the surprise attack into a costly defeat. Operation Greif, once envisioned as a decisive psychological strike, had become little more than a desperate gamble. When the war ended months later, Otto Skorzeny surrendered to the Allies. He was arrested and brought to trial in 1947, accused of war crimes for sending soldiers in enemy uniforms. The courtroom was tense. Skorzeny stood defiant, claiming he had followed the same principles used by Allied commandos. In a twist of irony, British officers testified on his behalf, admitting that the Allies had also used disguises for sabotage missions, including during the Normandy invasion. The judges agreed. Wearing an enemy uniform for infiltration was not a crime. Only fighting in it was. Skorzeny was acquitted, but his story didn't end there. Months later, he escaped from a U.S. detention camp in Germany and fled to Spain, where he lived under Franco's protection. Over the years, he became a mercenary and advisor to other regimes, his name forever tied to espionage and deception. For decades after the war, Operation Greif remained a case study in psychological warfare. Historians still debate how effective it truly was. Militarily, it failed to change the outcome of the battle. But psychologically, it succeeded beyond expectation. The fear it created among Allied troops was real. Soldiers no longer trusted the man beside them. Every checkpoint, every unfamiliar face became a potential threat. For several days, the greatest army in the world hesitated, not because of firepower, but because of uncertainty. Even Eisenhower himself later admitted that the confusion caused by the German infiltrators delayed Allied logistics and communication. During a crucial stage of the battle, a handful of men had managed to shake an entire army simply by pretending to be what they were not. Operation Greif reminds us that in war, identity is as powerful as a weapon. One lie, well placed, can do what thousands of bullets cannot. Otto Skorzeny's legacy remains controversial. A hero to some, a villain to others. But one fact is undeniable. His mission proved that war is not only fought on the battlefield, but also in the mind. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, trust itself became a casualty. This was Operation Greif, when the enemy spoke your language, wore your uniform, and walked among you. You've been watching WW2 War Files. Subscribe and open the next file in history's most daring deception.